Hi, I'm not Corey Hughes, actually. My name is Jason Bernie. Corey Hughes is here, and he's going to do the second half of this presentation. I'm a geologist. I work for the Saskatchewan Ministry of Economy with the Geologic Survey, and I was here back in the summertime when Yanpol had its meeting, and I was actually supposed to give this portion of the presentation, but we ran out of time. I came back because I thought it was important to tell you guys a little bit about Saskatchewan's potash resources and how they got here, and some of the projects that are currently going on. So just to start, basically, what is potash? Potash is, it's our provincial mineral, for those who don't know, and it's that rock right there. It's made up of about 60% common salt, table salt, halite, and the other 30 to 40% is made up of silite and carnallite, which are the potassium-bearing salts. And then there's also a small component of impurities. There's quartz and clay. And that red color that everyone associates with potash, that actually has nothing to do with potash. That's just an iron impurity in the rock. And those are just some photographs of what it looks like close up. And if you look at it, it has this really funny taste. The geologists are always licking rocks for some reason. So why does Saskatchewan have so much potash, and why is it not in other provinces? About 380 million years ago, this whole area was underwater. We had a shallow inland sea, and it stretched all the way from northwest Alberta down through to southeast Saskatchewan. And it was actually what we call a restricted sea. And you can see where those words are. You may not be able to read them, but those were arches. And the ocean would come in from the northwest, and it would flood all the way down. But the area in the far southeast where Saskatchewan is was very restricted, and it was a hot, arid climate at the time, so there was a lot of evaporation, and a lot of salt was falling out of the ocean. And every now and then, it would get super saline, so the salt would just precipitate out until what was left was a very saline brine, and that's when the potassium salts would start to fall out. So that's when the potash would start to fall out. And then you'd get a little bit of fresh ocean water would wash in with the rise in sea level, and that would cut off the potash deposition. This happened a few times, and that's why we have 3 or 4 principal potash members in the province. So if you've read any of the reports, or if you've heard any of them talk about the Esterhazy member, or the Belle Plaine member, or the Patience Lake member, those are just different layers of potash that are down below, and they're named after the mines which first started to tap into them. So that's just a little graph of how they were deposited. So that's the Esterhazy, that's the lowest one. And then as the ocean started to retreat a little bit, the Belle Plaine is deposited. And then further to the west, the Patience Lake. So they're all stacked on top of each other throughout the province. And it is true that most of it is confined to Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan has, according to the United States Geological Survey, who keeps track of all the world's resources for strategic reasons, we have about half of the world's potash reserves. And that's what it looks like from the side profile. So you can see down below, Esterhazy is the lowest, then Belle Plaine, and Patience Lake. And this is important because of the specific type of mining you want to do. Depends on what part of the province you're in and which of the potash resources are available. So that's a 3D model that our group has built, and the top represents the surface of the province, and underneath it shows you how the deposits of potash are actually dipping. So they're most shallow along its north and east margin. So on the belt from Saskatoon down to Esterhazy is where the potash deposits are. They're most shallow. They're about 800 meters to a kilometer. And that's why all the mines along that strip are conventional underground mines, because it's not as deep to get down there, and you can actually do shafts without those shafts closing on you. If you get down below 1,100, 1,200 meters, that's when the pressures of the earth start to get too much. And if you've got a shaft, salt is essentially what we call a ductile mineral. So it'll start to pinch and swell, and the shafts will actually close up on you. So anything below about 1,200 meters, that's when people start to switch to solution mining. So that's when you get down to the Moose Jaw area, and around here you're looking at, well, not quite here, I think here is about 1,200, 1,300, but when you get down to Moose Jaw, it's about 1,500 meters. And by the time you get down to the United States, you're looking at about 2 or 3 kilometers down to the potash, which makes it almost impossible to mine. So we really are in the sweet spot for mining in Saskatchewan. This graphic was already shown. These are the 10 existing mines in Saskatchewan. The only other one that's currently being built is K+S. This is just a graphic to show you how important potash mining is to Saskatchewan. Like I said, we have the 8 conventional underground mines. We have 2 solution mines, but only one of them was actually built to be a solution mine. The Patience Lake solution mine up by Saskatoon was built as an underground mine, and it flooded, and they were not able to save it. So what they did was they used the existing mine workings as caverns, and that they've been doing what's called secondary mining since then. And but the Belle Plaine mine was the only one in the province that was built to be a solution mine initially. So you can see what the production was for 2013 and 2014 for potash. In 2015, I think we're going to be right on pace with that. We set a record for sales volumes last year, and it's a huge revenue generator for the province. This graphic is not as good as I'd hoped, but this does show the locations of the existing potash exploration and development projects. Like I said, the only one that's actually got into the phase of construction is K+S. All of the other ones are still in what we call the feasibility or evaluation stage. And this is just a list of the projects. So up the top, K+S is listed. BHP, a lot of people think that is a mine in progress, but it's not. They've already sunk about $3 billion into the project overall, if you count the work they've done for the ports and out of the West Coast. But they still have not made a final decision as to whether or not they're going to go ahead and mine that. And the same can be said with all the projects you see listed up there. They're still all in the evaluation phases. And I think these are all listed on your map at the back as well. So that's all I have to say. I'll turn it over to Corey now, who's going to talk to you about Saskatchewan's taxation and royalty system.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back. I was here last summer. I had a really boring presentation on taxes I didn't get to give, so you get to see it now. But it won't be just that, so I hope you have some coffee. So, potash resource taxation. One thing that it's important to note that potash companies and our resource industry in general pays a lot of taxes and a lot of different taxes. And I'll just really briefly go through them. I've been asked just to identify what a potash company will pay and to who, essentially. So, the first thing I should point out is you may have noticed, or you may have heard in the government's most recent budget that we're doing a review of potash resource taxation. That's number 1 and 2, the Crown Royalty and the Potash Production Tax. I'll talk about those a little bit in a bit. So the Crown Royalty is the first tax paid by companies. It's levied on all potash produced from Crown land, which is about 50% of the potash resource. And essentially it works out to about 2 to 3% of the value of potash. And that's dependent on the ore grade. Now that is under review, so at the end of this year we hope to have some potential changes to that, and of course we'll update you on those as they go. And I'll talk a little bit about how much that cuts in a second. Potash Production Tax is the tax collected on all sales of potash in the province. There's a link at the bottom. If someone wants to really get into this, you can find a lot more detail. I'm not going into very much detail. But it's 2 components. There's a base payment and a profit tax. Just to show how much do we collect, well, in the last fiscal year, between the Crown Royalty and the PPT, we collected $546 million. And I have a chart at the end, and I'll just go over on some historical stuff on what we would normally collect. So potash companies also pay corporate income tax at a rate of 12% to the provincial government, 15% to the federal government, and those collection numbers aren't published by either governments, and companies do publish some of it in their annual reports, but very dependent on how much companies are spending, and so that amount can vary significantly. Also, a resource surcharge is collected by the province, and that's 3% of the value of sales on all potash sold in Saskatchewan. So that also applies to oil and gas, uranium, and coal as well. So just the surcharge alone is about $170 million. So when you start talking 546 from Crown Royalty and PPT and 170 from surcharge, we're looking at around $750 million in the last fiscal year. And that isn't all inclusive. And then municipal property tax, which I know is an important one to the municipality. I know there's been some communication between the Havelock Committee and government relations to tax this tax. It's been around for a long time. It was designed to redistribute municipal property taxes on potash mines with eligible reading here, but rural and urban municipalities within a 20-mile radius of the potash mine shaft. One of the reasons for that is our potash resource is fairly consistent, so where the potash mine was going to be produced or located, really it doesn't have to be in one place. So it was really designed, there's a large impact community around the potash mine with a lot of benefits, and it was a way to ensure that all the benefits just didn't go to one rural municipality, even though there was significant impacts in those others. So there's a link at the bottom. It's a very extensive information. I encourage you to look at it to better understand it. I know the Havelock Committee has Facebook page, the Twitter account, if they wanted to provide that information on it. It'd probably be a good opportunity to do that, because I think this is an issue that people want to know more about, but I'm not really the guy best to explain it. It would take a long time. A few other things on benefits. There's, I'll talk about the jobs in a second, the direct jobs, but there's a lot of associated jobs with any mine, especially potash. I'm going to leave, I have copies of this presentation, and we're going to be providing the presentation, so I won't go through it in great detail, but there's a lot of goods required at each stage of potash mining, and it's obviously the long mining time, so there's a lot of opportunities for spin-off jobs in site services as well. There's a lot of jobs that are not directly associated with potash, but create a lot of economic benefit, especially to the nearby regions. And you can see, and I could even get a list of these, but there is hundreds of Saskatchewan companies that provide goods and services to the potash industry. A lot of those companies are here as a result of the potash industry. And there will be, as the potash industry grows and new mines and expansions grow, there will be more and more of those opportunities. So this is a little bit more, and like I said, I'll leave this presentation with you, but there is hundreds of millions of dollars spent annually on operation goods and services, a lot of those from Saskatchewan companies. And of course, Saskatchewan companies have developed over time to develop or to be able to provide everything from some of the simplest things to very complex engineering and very complex mining machinery is also developed in Saskatchewan. And they threw this in here, but a recent study in Ontario would be similar to Saskatchewan, that in addition to the mining, just the additional benefits and the supply chain opportunities really represent about 77% of the mining value alone. So there's tremendous economic benefit beyond just mining. This is just a statistical table that you might find interesting, and it just goes back to 2006, and if someone wants, I can provide it much further. And you can just see some things. The fourth row is the taxation, and you can see it's fairly volatile. The fifth row. Taxation is fairly volatile depending on how much companies are spending, and you can see the capital spending is the bottom one. If you look at the capital spending of close to, in 2013, $3.7 billion, it has an impact. We have a lot of benefit. We have, in the Potash Production Tax, we have a lot of incentives for growth. One of the reasons why we have interest from major mining companies like BHP, Yancoal, Rio Tinto, are because, and Valley and others, is because we introduced a lot of changes in the early 2000s to encourage growth in the industry. We hadn't had a new mine in 50 years, actually 40, I should say, but this really spurred things on. When I talk about, I'll just go into the strategy a bit because I saw it in the presentation. It's important to note we don't pick winners and losers in any industry. There's, I have some notes on this actually. I should have. Our potash strategy is essentially that, and any of our resources, we encourage the responsible development of our resources. And we allow markets to determine what will be developed. We're not in a position to determine what is the best project and who should develop it, and then more importantly, who should not develop it. We only produce 1/3 of the world's potash, so 2/3 is produced elsewhere. There's other projects opening there's other mines opening in other parts of the world. So it's important to keep that in mind, that there's, when you look at Jason's list earlier, we only have one mine under development, despite all the interest in potash. We have one mine under development. We have 3 with approved environmental assessments. However, and Yancoal working on their environmental assessment, and others as well. So, not all these will move towards development, and it's really dependent on what the market decides. And it's not so much what's happening today. Companies will have different views of what will be potash prices and what potash supply and demand will be 5-10 years from now when those mines will come on stream. So I just have a few broad conclusions. I think it's important to know we are relatively early in the process. I know we're at the environmental assessment stage. We already have, like I said, there's 3 environmental assessments approved on mines that are not moving forward currently. There's, when we look at this mine or any other mine, you have an exploration stage and it goes right to decommissioning. In some cases, that can be more than 100 years. And when we talk about our potash strategy, we have at current rates about 400 to 500 years of potash right now. So there's no shortage of potash in Saskatchewan. We have, as Jason said, 46% of the world's potash. So it's important to note that we are still early when we look at what companies can provide to a municipality or communities. The companies have spent, in this case, a couple percent of what they'll have to spend entirely before this mine is. If you're talking to a $3 to $4 billion mine, we have less than $100 million in the ground right now. So it's just important to know where we are today. Also important to know that we've been mining potash for over 50 years. So it's a very strict regulatory environment. It only gets stronger and more strict. So when we talk about environment, occupational health and safety, labor, water, transportation, taxation, all really good areas of where questions have been asked. This isn't new. We have 10 mines. We've had them operating for over 40 years. The province is very experienced when we talk about determining water issues and those things. That there's a long history of knowing the impacts of those at existing mines, and it's helped us move forward with the potential new projects. And that gets into the next line, is that this project is not unique to the Valley project, to the Western Potash project. It's a solution mine. It has essentially the same environmental impacts. It has the same issues and the same concerns from the communities at that time. Not all of the communities and the RMs associated with the new mines and the existing mines continue to have questions from those companies and similar questions we hear today. And linked to that, of course, is that the issues that saw in a very good presentation earlier, traffic, bus routes, jobs, training, water, subsidence. There are issues that go on at all our mining projects. The questions are very similar. There's opportunity, as I said, the engagement process has really just begun. It's a few years in. The engagement at the mines that have been operating for 40 years continues. It only has strengthened over time. But the engagement goes from exploration to decommissioning, and there's going to always be an opportunity to work with companies. There's always going to be new issues that are raised, and I think it's important to understand that. I think from an engagement standpoint, communication, I think both sides, Yancoal with the office in Earl Grey, I think is a positive step. It's an opportunity to reach out to them with any questions, but it's also the Havelock Committee, which is designed to provide information to the community, and I hope that they use they've set up some very good vehicles for communication with Facebook, email, pamphlets, whatever, just visiting. And I think between the two, that's a really positive side. And I think, lastly, as far as we're going to have an environmental assessment released, I would assume very shortly. It's an opportunity to ask a lot of questions, to participate. I encourage you to talk to other RMs. I know people in multiple RMs that have been affected by the potash industry, and lots of them. We have very high support for mining in Saskatchewan, we have incredibly high support for potash mining in the regions where potash mining exists. Talking to those RMs there's farms, I know people that farm next to the tailings pile, and they have for 4 years, and they're on the third generation of people working at the mines, and they're very supportive. And I think, they're valuable people to talk to among everyone else. So, I encourage continued engagement, and events like this, I hope, are positive towards that. So, and we'll be around. Like I said, I have some copies of the presentation, and obviously we'll be available for the question and answer period if you have any questions. So, thank you.